finally got the live stream ready to roll. Technical difficulties on the Doug side of things. I guess I'm not the only one struggling today. The computer's not going as well either. This is the Bankster DFS Sunday NFL Blitz, Week 9 with Doug and Gutta, who I seem to have lost on my screen here. There's Gutta coming up. Doug is a little gross today. Had my booster yesterday, and I am feeling it. So it's going to be a lot of the Gutta show. I'm going to try to get DraftKings up and running and let him do a lot of the talking. Week 9, Gutta, what's good, buddy?
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good this week. As I wrote my article, last week was a little weird. Last week was one of those weeks where I played many more lineups and lower entry fees per lineup just because it felt like it was one of those weeks where you were either hitting the nuts or your lineups were crashing and burning in the first hour and you just knew you were done. And unfortunate for me, my GPP was the latter where they just completely all crapped the bed. But you know what? I felt like I had the right read on it and cash bailed us out, which is why we do play a good amount of cash games. And this week, I'm feeling much more confident. I feel the convictions are there. I feel that the plays are there. It's a very condensed pool and stacks that I'm running and what I'm looking for. I feel like all my lineups are basically all of the same guys, just in different configurations. So I feel very comfortable about that. Again, there's no guarantees in DFS with all this, but when there's weeks where you have those convictions and you feel confident, it could be a very strong day when you're condensed like that.
And for those who are kind of new and just kind of hanging out here for the first time, if you're not reading Gutta's article every single week, you're missing out. It's fantastic. His GPP and pivots, it's great, and I'm so glad. We split up the writing duties between cash and GPP. He gets the GPP. He's so good at it. And the article's great. I look forward to it every week. Great read. And you get that at banksterdfs.com, $3.99 a week. Get you access to everything that we do. On point. And I needed it this week. I'm going to need it this week because I'm not feeling the GPPs the way you are. So I'm really excited to hear kind of where your head's at, especially now with the news that Tua play this week, because I was really into the Tua thing. But let's do a quick look at cash. Handle cash a little differently this week. I did instead of a core, I did a sort of a roadmap for cash, like kind of, an if-then kind of deal, choose your own adventure where you have like pools of players really, and you just kind of pick and choose from each pool of players. I'm going to let you talk about where you feel cash should be at for this week, kind of position by position, and I'm going to sit back and feel miserable while you do that.
Yeah, so at quarterback, I mean, there's definitely a solid pool of choices. I mean, there's even guys not in our pool this week that I think are very viable, like Josh Allen. But it becomes, all right, where are you paying and what are you looking to do elsewhere? So it kind of narrowed down for me. Either you're paying up, you're going Lamar, you're taking that more production and safety, or you kind of really just punting it and going Jordan Love. Ultimately, because of where the value lies this week, or doesn't lie really, and just how the players are, I felt Love was the best way to go because there is, you don't need much from him. The KC defense hasn't been that great. And also too, we have no idea what Love is going to look like, where he's going to be. Is he going to be Justin Fields 2.0 where he just looks beyond atrocious? Or is he kind of going to, be the guy that steps in and he's learned for a year and a half behind Aaron Rodgers and he kind of sees the game a little differently? And, remember, we're not looking for a lot. We're looking for, anywhere from 12 to, 16, 17 points. That's not asking for a lot from a $4,400 player, especially for a quarterback. If you look at the higher end of it, if you want 16 points from Jordan Love, well, really, you're talking about, the touchdowns getting you 4 points. So now you got 12 points left, and you're getting, it's asking for a lot, but 300 yards and right, am I doing my math right? 300 yards and a touchdown gets you that 16 points. But again,
even 200 yards will get you 200 yards, right? It'll get you 6 or so points, right? And then if he rushes for 40 yards, you're right there. You're right.
Oh yeah, and that's the whole thing too. And if he happens, if he goes 200 yards and 2 touchdowns, like let's say they do, they do all right, they move the ball, a little bit, or if this is the on the GPP end, not to change subject, but if this is the game where Kansas City comes out and does what they did against Philly, where they're just looking to stick it to everybody that thinks they're dead right now. Maybe Love's got to throw it 45 times, and he's just going to sort of get you to 12 to 16 points on volume alone.
And isn't the thing about using Jordan Love, it's less about using Jordan Love and more about the other players you can fit in your lineup, right? Because you can fit stud wide receiver, 3 stud running backs, a mid-range wide receiver. You don't have to go super punt at any position other than maybe tight end. And right, that's what Jordan Love gets you. You're not rostering Jordan Love because Jordan Love's going to carry you across the line. You're rostering Jordan Love so you can get all those other players in your lineup. And, correct me if I'm wrong, but right, you don't think Jordan Love's the key here in terms of he's the guy who's getting the points. It's everyone else you're getting.
It's what you get elsewhere, because this week there's no running back between $4,500 and $5,000 that is getting you 15 touches. There's no wide receiver that, there's Landry and Renfro that are in good matchups that should have decent target volume, but to the same token, there's no $3,500 guy thrown into a big role that we can say is going to be fantastic.
Any love for Ty God, T-Mobile? Any love for Tyrod Taylor? Or does the
I think he's viable there. If you want to use the same sort of narrative with Jordan Love of having that punt there and spending the extra $600, if you find it in your lineup elsewhere, then by all means. I think Taylor's a little bit safer there and probably is going to have the same sort of passing volume. That extra 600 did a lot for me in my lineup, so that's why I kind of went towards Love. But there's definitely room there for Taylor as well if you construct your lineup the right way where you're comfortable in other areas.
For sure. Now, in the chat, Steinbachs came in and has a question. And I know it's not exactly where we're at with quarterbacks, but we do want chat participation, so we will stop whatever conversation we have to answer questions in the chat. Please put them in there because it's your show, guys. We want to hear what you guys need. Gutta, if you had the choice on 3 wide receivers, I'm going to guess it's a season long, not quite DFS, but I have no problem covering season long. Who are you using out of those 3?
Wow. That's a tough one. I would probably say
there's no bad option. There's no good option. They're all just meh, right? Like they're kind of meh options.
Yeah, I'd probably say Boyd and Myers are the likely safest ones that are going to get some more volume. Jones has been odd. He had such a good start to the year. He's really leveled off, and the emergence of Agnew, it's hurt Chenault more, but it's affected Jones a bit too. I think, in the Cincy Cleveland game, Boyd's actually got the best matchup out of all 3, and Myers is the clear one with New England. Not that they probably have to pass much today, but I think Boyd and Myers give you a little better safety and production than what Jones will do.
I picked up a little bit what you said there. Not that they're going to have to pass much, and I know you have been championing Damian Harris a lot over the last 3 weeks or so because he's been in great matchups and he's been working out. I was a little disappointed last week that he didn't get a rushing bonus or some receptions, because he was, but even 14 points last week or 13 points whatever he had was his absolute floor. Like he had a nice week. But I don't have him in my cash pool. Is that a mistake? What are you thinking of the running back cash pool that we're seeing here? Because again, if we're going down to Jordan Love, there's got to be a reason to use Jordan Love instead of Lamar Jackson. And I would think it's to spend up at the running back position. There's so many. Am I missing anyone? Is Damian Harris part of this? What are your thoughts on the running back position for cash this week?
No, definitely not missing Damian Harris there. He's not cash viable this week. It is a little bit of a tougher matchup. So with that, I wouldn't use Harris in cash this week, but I'm very confident with the pool that we do have there. Like, pulling up the overall player pool. Definitely Kamara, Eckler, and Zeke to me are your top 3 spend up options. Mixon's been getting the volume. He's been doing very well, but Cleveland's run D has been pretty strong this year, so that at 7,100, Mixon could see some issues. You could have some struggles there, but Kamara, Eckler, and Zeke are just in fantastic, like really, really strong spots. They're going to get, such a high workload and everything. And then in that mid range, it's a little bit tougher. There's nobody really in that mid range I would be comfortable in cash until you get down to Darrell Williams. I mean, Williams is going to be likely in a good spot. And again, if Williams is succeeding, that means Kansas City is likely leading, which plays into Jordan Love passing the ball a bit more. So if you wanted to spend down a little more at running back to pay up elsewhere, like maybe not punting all the way down at tight end, Darrell Williams can definitely give you the advantage there if you wanted to go that route. But I understand Boston Scott being in there because it's such a good matchup against the Chargers, but I mean, Scott, the entire Philly backfield I've completely avoided everywhere. I mean, that's a really, really tough one because even at a relatively cheap price of $5,200, unless he's running for over 100 yards, you probably need multiple touchdowns from him to pay off value, even in a cash setting.
Are you running Boston Scott at all in tournaments, by the way, as a run back on a Chargers stack? Or are you sticking with Goddard for that?
My really only Philly exposure this week is Goddard. I don't have, yeah. I mean, I Philly. It's so tough to know what to do. Like if you ask me, I have to play one Philly running back. What would it be? I'd probably actually lean to Gainwell, because I don't think what we saw last week was truly what they think of Gainwell. I think just because the game got so out of hand and Scott and Howard are more of kind of the, between the tackles type of guy, and Gainwell's more the changeup. They didn't really need Gainwell, but I do think Gainwell is going to still have a, relatively big role in the backfield.
Well, it's surprising you're going back to him because if I'm not mistaken, in chat last week in our Slack chat, it was constant like, is Gainwell even playing? I'm pretty sure that was you that was like really wondering about Gainwell.
Yeah,
I think it was you, and I'm surprised, but I like that you're willing to go back to him even after he kind of skunked us last week because it shows that you're taking recency bias and putting it to the side, which is a smart way to play.
Oh yeah, I mean, again, I'm not using Gainwell anywhere either, but if you were looking like at Boston Scott or like that Philly backfield, that is just such a great matchup. We've been targeting, running backs against the Chargers like every week. You can go there. Gainwell was a big chalk name last week and literally did nothing, until garbage time where they gave him some carries. And I was, for the most part off of Gainwell. Had him sprinkled in a little bit here and there because of the opportunity. But yeah, I mean, if you're looking at that Philly backfield because of the matchup, I'd probably lean Gainwell over the other guys because, I just think last week was more fluky and the way that game went that Detroit didn't even show up than anything else.
Yeah, it was a rough week with Swift and all that. Did you mention, I know I stepped away for a second, did you mention which running back you're going with in your cash lineup this week?
Yeah, my preference is Kamara, Eckler, and Zeke.
All right, so you and I have the same running backs. Listen, I didn't do a core this week, but if I were doing a core, I don't see how I could put anyone else but those three guys in the core for running back. Like I think there's just an avenue to get there. Now, earlier in the week, I was kind of on Adam Thielen and Brandon Cooks, Marquise Brown, like two of those three guys. It was like Thielen and either Brown or Cooks for my receivers. And with Agnew coming back or Rashad Bateman, really, though, I'm out on Bateman given the fact that he's banged up and Watkins is going to get some snaps. And so I'm kind of moved away from Bateman and cash. And there's a lot of other options at the low end between Jamal Agnew, Bryan Edwards. I think Ayuk is really in play this week. Deontay Harris, I think, is someone that we can look at more for tournaments. But I've pivoted off of Thielen a little bit because Jarvis Landry at $5,100. I don't know how I missed him earlier in the week at only $5,100, but the amount of targets he's going to get in a game where I do think Cleveland's going to have to throw, that's actually coming down from Thielen to Landry has allowed me to move up to one of those higher end wide receivers. And I think I'm off of Adams because of the Love thing. I don't want to overexpose myself because I am using Love in cash. And I've got to Tyreek Hill because I want exposure on both sides of that game in cash. So I do think Tyreek Hill is the guy that I'm going to be using. He is in my cash lineup. And I just want to throw this out there. So who are those three? Matt wants to know, and this ties into this conversation. He wants to know which of those three running backs are you paying down? I'm not. I'm using all three, and I do have Tyreek Hill still in my cash lineup. So I think you're able to get all of them in there. Gutta, how are you making your wide receivers look this week?
I mean, I definitely like where the pool is. I find myself Actually, I'm using Justin Jefferson. I think that I think he's in a strong spot as well this week. Whether it's Jefferson or Thielen, I think they're both they're both lined up for a good area. And then at the wide receivers, I mean, I'm spending down. I'm not spending down all the way. Like I do like where Landry and Renfro are as well because again the volume should be there. I mean Landry's kind of the only. I mean, not that Beckham was doing anything, but Landry's kind of the only game in town there anyway. Peoples Jones is going to be active, but he's still a little banged up. I mean, you got the tight ends that all mix in. No Kareem Hunt. So is Nick Chubb getting catches? Is Dearness Johnson getting catches? Like, where is it really going? I mean, it's setting up for double digit double digit targets. And yeah, this definitely could be a game where Cleveland plays into the, OBJ Baker narrative and they say, yeah, Baker's so much better without him. And they kind of force Baker to throw it. And, that leads to likely Landry getting double digit targets. And if you're doing that, it's a good spot there. And I think Renfro too is in a very similar situation. The Giants defense is very beatable in the secondary, Ruggs not being there anymore doesn't really add to Renfro necessarily, but it just gives more credence to Renfro, I think. Because also, too, it's like, all right, well, who's going to step up now with Ruggs being out and some of the production that he was giving? Bryan Edwards has had an opportunity. He hasn't really showed it yet. I mean, he's definitely there's potential there. You got Zay Jones as a deep threat, stone cold minimum price, but obviously that's not a cash play that we're looking at. So I like where that falls with it. And
so is this what your cash lineup kind of looks like at this point, or am I off somewhere?
No,
I'm just kind of hearing what you're saying.
You're reading me exactly.
Okay, so Matt had asked, where are you spending down? You and I are going a little bit different in cash, and I'll talk about where my spend down is. But I want to hear where your spend down is. If this is where we're going, we've got 2,500 left per player. It seems like you're going to have to go with a. Oh no, you're not going to have to go with the punt. Oh, I don't really. I thought I only have put 2 wide receivers in. So if I'm not mistaken, you're going with. I can't imagine you're going with anyone other than Albert O at tight end.
Correct. Yep.
That's and exactly so that leaves you with just a punt defense. I assume you're going to go with Cincinnati or Cleveland or Kansas City.
I have Cleveland in there.
Okay. That's about where I was at. So your pay down really is at tight end, and obviously we always pay down defense, and really it's a quarterback this week, right? The pay down's there. The only differences I have in my lineup right now, just to follow through what Matt had said, and then we can talk. I'll let you talk a little bit more about where else you're feeling, but. I went here. I don't remember who my last receiver was. I have to pull that up. I think I was down on the Panthers there, which gave me $4,300. I'm pretty sure I'm stuck on Agnew right now, though. I'm not 100% sure how I feel because that Bills game looks scary. I do think Tajay Sharp makes some sense. I do think Rondell Moore makes some sense. I do think Ayuk makes some sense, and I may end up going with Ayuk here. And then spending up a little bit more on defense with Ayuk, especially if Kyler Murray's going to be out. I do think the 49ers defense comes into play, and so that works. And then if because we get the sense that the San Francisco guys are all going to be sort of limited, you could always pivot to Rondell Moore if we know AJ Green's not going to play and Andre Hopkins is out, and you kind of want to trust Colt McCoy. But I think this could be actually a pretty good setup. It's that real last position. It's is it Sharp? Is it Agnew? And then you just come off the force of the Panthers or the Giants or the Cleveland or somewhere down there.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at. Alberto is supposed to play, as far as I know. I don't think he's out. I know he was a little banged up, but he should be playing.
Yeah, well, they are right there. They're the 1 o'clock game.
Yeah, we'll know in 7 minutes.
Yeah,
all those questions
so
get answered too.
We don't have to wait as much. I know the San Francisco game, just because of all like the pending stuff and everything. I'd love to be able to have more confidence either in Ayuk or Rondell Moore, whether it's cash or even for GPP. But that being the 4 o'clock game makes it just a touch harder because when you're looking at cheap guys like that, your options become so limited then on what you can do if, like, let's say Hopkins is playing. Well, that kind of takes away some snaps from more than, or if, report comes out, oh yeah, Debo felt good in his pregame warmups. He's maybe going to play more than anticipated. Well, what does that do for Ayuk then? So some of that.
I was going to say the one thing I think Ayuk has going is he was slowly starting to improve a little bit in terms of his offensive prowess on the team. I mean, he had the one target against Indy, kind of sucks, but 6, 3, 4, 7, those aren't big numbers, and he hasn't done a ton with them. But if Samuel and Kittle are both really limited, I do think the team will rely a little bit more on Ayuk, and that 7 targets can become 8 or 9, and he is a dynamic offensive player.
Yeah.
Matt, we do about mixed. Oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say we do already know that Kittle is going to be limited because they already said he's on a pitch count and he's not going to be playing more than half the game. And frankly, if Kyler Murray doesn't play, I mean, this game could be, pretty much over by halftime anyway, and Kittle may not even see much of the field because why, risk it if they're controlling it pretty easily and Colt McCoy is playing like, Colt McCoy.
Someone had made a really funny comment on Twitter about Kittle playing half the game. They're like, yeah, the half that San Francisco's on offense. I thought that was pretty funny. I assume that's not what they meant. This game is really interesting. And when we get to tournaments, it's a really interesting tournament game because Mitchell's banged up. Everyone's pretty much on a pitch count. Jeff Wilson's coming back. I mean, it's probably just an avoid, but boy, it feels like one player is going to blow up from this game. And if we can pinpoint or if we can get in our lineups who that is, like Jeff Wilson does it once a year, and Ayuk is a guy that who could be Mohamed Sanu for all we know. Like, something's going to pop from that game, and I want to have some exposure to it.
If you're looking, I mean, it's not official yet. Wilson's going to be active. They just activated him from IR, but he may not be active for the game. But I mean, if you're looking in the San Fran backfield, the most logical choice might be Hasty. If you think someone's going to do something or pop, because he's kind of the only healthy guy there. I mean, again, if Mitchell's active, he's going to get some. I mean, Mitchell's been only, an early down back anyway. He's only been running the ball. So, I was anticipating, I really liked him in that mid range because he was going overlooked. And if he was getting 18 to 20 carries, he gets the goal line work. Mitchell was a good shot there. But, if he's going to be more limited and he's getting only maybe 10 to 12 carries, well, if you have the stomach to use him, you better hope he's getting multiple touchdowns. That's the only way he's paying off for you.
Maybe that's just an avoid game altogether, perhaps. Other than I do think Ayuk makes some sense in cash. I may end up moving around with him, but to sharp. But I do think there's some movement there. What do you think about Mixon in cash? I was on him earlier in the week in cash, and I've come off him just because I didn't think I needed him. Is he viable for you in cash, or is he more of a tournament play, or is he just an altogether fade at that price because there's other guys at that price point that make more sense?
I think he would make more sense in a tournament opposed to cash. I don't have any exposure this week. I think it's a tough matchup for him. Cleveland's been really good against the running backs this year. And I don't know. I'm not putting too much weight in this game in GPPs, but it has a feel like it could be a sneaky shootout game. This is one of the games that I had a little bit of a tough read on because you just never know what the heck Cleveland's offense is going to come out and look like. And since he has been more of a slow-paced team this year, they have preferred to run first. But now you're getting to the point that, well, is it skewed because they were doing that earlier in the year so much heavier, going slower with Burrow and making sure he's healthy and bringing him back? Or is it really how their offense is because they've been successful and they're putting less onus on the pass because that's what good teams generally can do if you have a good run game and you're playing pretty decently on defense, which they have been. Because this is there's very few people watching NFL right now that remember what a good Bengals team was like, which you're talking about in the 80s, Yeah. So we're used to the Bengals being awful, being able to, get dominated by teams and just having to throw a ton because they're always down by a lot. Like that, before Burrow got hurt last year, he was leading the NFL in dropbacks. I mean, the guy was going to, probably have a year that Herbert ended up having. And we're talking about Burrow and Herbert in the same vein coming into this year if Burrow doesn't get hurt. But Burrow kind of was the forgotten man, but he's, proven how good he is, and he's been very efficient. But now, does the offense keep this way, or do they end up, throwing more? So, coupled with that, with the uncertainty of what the offense really game plan is, what Cleveland may look like. And just, again, Cleveland being very good against the run, I think Mixon's a little better of an avoid as opposed to using, especially in cash.
The lasting image I always have of the Bengals is the year that they were going to make the playoffs. Brad Smith went crazy on them for the Jets and knocked them out in the last game of the season. That it's like a Sunday night game. I'll never forget that. Burrow, I mean, I love his volume, not so much his volume, but his touchdown volume, right? He's been really efficient. And we like efficiency from our quarterbacks. I have one Burrow stack both on FanDuel and DraftKings. I'm not going crazy, but what I do have, as we sort kind of pivot to tournaments, I do have quite a bit of Chubb Chase mini stacks. I do think that makes some sense, particularly on FanDuel where the receiving doesn't matter as much. I think Chubb makes a lot of sense over on FanDuel. I actually think Mixon makes more sense on FanDuel too, in case it's one of the games where he isn't going to catch a ton of passes. I've definitely come down on Mixon. I probably shouldn't even have him in the cash pool, but there's some matchup that just kind of worked. I think it was the fact that the Jets threw a lot to their running backs the week prior, but I think that's more of just the way the Jets run their offense. I don't know. I just think that's I don't know. The Jets played Cincinnati. That doesn't make sense. I don't know what I was thinking this week when I'm kind of off. I'm kind of off Mixon.
I mean, listen, Mixon gets the volume. Like going into last week, there was there was a lot of narrative floating around that Mixon's devolved into a timeshare with Samaje Perine, and that really wasn't the case. It was how their games just went. Like the game against Baltimore, they blew him out. Yeah, they didn't use Mixon as much because why use your top running back when you're up three touchdowns and a field goal? Like, you use your backup, give your backup some work, save your stud guy, and then last week Mixon came out and he got like 80% of the snaps in work. So it's like, okay, that was done.
Quite a bit of news coming out prior to the inactives, which are just about to drop. Apparently Teddy Bridgewater was tested this morning. He ended up passing. He was fine, but as he was a close contact to Drew Lock, who I guess ended up having COVID. Harrison Smith for the Vikings was put on the COVID list today, which will absolutely open things up for Mark Andrews. I was fading Andrews because the Vikings have been great against tight ends. But if Harrison Smith's not playing, Mark Andrews is opened up quite a bit, and I think I will use him in place of Gesicki a little bit more from my Miami stacks because I'm not in love with I guess I'll play Brissett some places, but I'm not loving the Dolphins with the whole Tua thing now. So now I'm just going to take a look at what else happens. But yeah, the Harrison Smith thing I think is a really big deal for Mark Andrews. I think it's going to open him up quite a bit today from a guy that I was pretty much fading.
Yeah,
I'm playing a lot of Baltimore, but I was fading Andrews.
Yeah, I've been kind of in that same boat.
Sammy Watkins is inactive. Sorry,
Watkins is inactive. Nice.
So that opens up Bateman quite a bit again. Back to Bateman. Maybe we go back to Bateman and cash now. You know what I mean? Like, wow. Okay, so that opens things up.
I like that. That's good. I mean,
sorry. Continue what you're saying.
Yeah, I was just since you were talking about Andrews, just kind of touching on the tight end. The tight ends are interesting this week because I think there's a lot of guys in good spots. You got Kelce kind of going overlooked. I mean, it's tough, right? Because Kelce hasn't shown that much. I mean, at least for Kelce's standards, he hasn't shown much, right? I mean, 7 targets last week, only 4 for 27. 2 weeks ago, 12 targets, but he went 7 for 65. I mean, you get 7 for 65 from a tight end, you're usually pretty happy, but not when it's Travis Kelce, right? Aside for week 1 and week 2, I mean, he's gotten 17 points in 3 other games, but again, when you're normally paying anywhere from 7,000 to 8,000 for the guy, that just doesn't cut it. And we've yet to really see him come back. Like last year, we started talking about it towards the end of the year. Kelce was basically doing what Devontae Adams was doing, but at a fraction of the cost. And it got to the point where there was no point in using Adams because you can use Kelce at such a premium position and get the same production for less. We're not seeing that from Kelce this year. Now, and also again, is it Kelce? Is it because he's a little bit older now and he's getting to that age point where maybe he is wearing down, or is it more of just the overall Kansas City offense where they are pretty limited? There's not a lot of weapons there. Mahomes, all these fancy plays that he did in the past are now turning into turnovers. Yep. That's a big issue too. Mahomes' style is is one that when it's going right, everything goes right. But it's also too, yes, the first 3 years of his career, that these things that he was doing, that probably 70% of the time it's going to be a turnover, wasn't. Well, now it's going in the other direction, and he's got to get a little smarter there, I think. And given his talent level, he probably will. But again, that's the Kelsey conundrum. Is it, where is it coming from? But he's going overlooked, and anytime you get a guy
Very
like
much
that with his ceiling potential going overlooked, it's interesting. And also too,
super cheap too. He's super cheap considering. I mean,
for
for
Kelsey,
him,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
he's only 7,000, which is unbelievable. And then the other tight end that I think is really really going looked in more of that mid price range is Dalton Schultz.
Like
He's
him a lot.
yeah, Dallas should should handle this game relatively easy. Then Denver has a good enough offense; they could put up a couple of points there. Zeke is uber chalk this week, so any look at the Cowboys' pass offense gives you a little leverage. And one thing which is a little under the radar is Blake Jarwin is out. He actually got put on IR, so that's going to increase Schultz's snap rate and time that he's on the field and routes run, because they were using Jarwin quite a bit. I mean, Schultz was getting a little bit more of the work, but it still took a little bit away from him. So now if you're getting Schultz's normal workload, but with extra stuff there, extra usage, that goes a long way. And again, he's same price. He's in that price range with Gesicki and Goddard, who are going to have, 3 to 4 times higher ownership.
And he's got 6 or more targets in all but one game this year. A couple of the things that came across, Albert O is active. James Robinson is inactive. We weren't using him, and I don't think we need to be using Carlos Hyde. Nope. Yes, Matt Bateman. Rashad Bateman is absolutely cash viable. I've updated my cash lineup right here on the screen. He is in my cash lineup now. He was originally in my cash lineup. Then I got a little nervous with the whole Sammy Watkins thing and then Bateman being nicked up. But if Bateman is playing and Watkins is not, then I'm very happy with that. Yes, Tua is out with a fractured hand.
So, and also too, one other thing with Baltimore to give you a little more confidence in the passing game too. Latavius Murray is out as well. So, Murray's kind of the only running back that I would say you'd think the Ravens would run slightly more, because now with Freeman, right, Bell, and maybe if Williams is active,
maybe.
There's nothing exactly there that is going to say, all right, the Ravens are going to run it, aside from Lamar, of course.
Right, of course. Sam Darnold and Christian McCaffrey both active as expected. I don't expect McCaffrey to get his full workload. Darnold just means PJ Walker is off my season-long team in my 2 QB league, so I have to start Trey Lance. That's my own problem, though. Matt had asked, is Bateman definitely in? Bateman is 100% active. He should be good to go. We don't know if, he might get injured in game, might not. That we can't know. Tua is active, by the way, but only as the emergency quarterback, and he has a fractured hand. He's not playing. As Joe Dolan has pointed out here on Twitter, it is the incompetence of the Dolphins franchise not have someone else on the roster ready to go. So he's not playing Tua, which really sucks. Lamb and Cooper are both active, which kind of takes Ced Wilson out of the mix. I thought Ced Wilson was an interesting tournament option, but now if I, just like you were saying, Gutta, if I'm looking to pivot a little bit in Dallas to move off some of the chalk, it'll definitely be with Dalton Schultz. I think Schultz and Cooper is the way to go if you want to come off a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I mean, listen, I do think, some Cowboys passing stacks are viable. I mean, Dak is going very overlooked today, at 6,900. I mean, he had been over 7,000 his last 2 games. He's back down a little bit. He's going to be sub 5% owned, and yes, you're going to have really high ownership with Amari Cooper, but because he's just grossly mispriced, I don't even know why he's at 5,700. That makes no sense at all. Especially, I mean, I know they come out with everything sort of as Sunday night's happening, so they definitely missed that one.
Yeah, but still, Cooper should be 65, 66.
Yeah, and CeeDee Lamb is going to have pretty low ownership this week. And again, with where Zeke is right now trending as the second highest owned running back, just behind Eckler, but they're both going to be over 25% and possibly even 30% there. So if you're using a Dak stack with Cooper and or Lamb, I mean, if this is a game where it's like, yeah, Dak throws for 304 touchdowns, one, is that really going to surprise you? And two, the leverage that you gain off of Zeke being monster chalk. I mean, you're lapping the field there, and then depending how you piece it together, you got a real shot.
I pulled up the New England running backs for a very important reason. I feel like Bill Belichick gives us a little insight to how he's going to call the game, or how McDaniels call the game based on his inactives. This week, J.J. Taylor's inactive, which means Ramondre Stevenson is active. What that tells me is they're probably going to try to run the ball a little bit more. And I think, they do that with Harris more so than not. Now, if Taylor's active and Stevenson's inactive, when that happens, they tend to pass a little bit more. Taylor and Brandon Bolden are a little more involved. So I think they're cluing us in on how they're going to game plan this. And I think that speaks well to Harris. Again, not necessarily cash, because he doesn't catch enough passes. But I do have a bit of Harris in tournaments. He's been on a real roll the last few weeks, scoring every week, getting at least 14 carries, 80 or more yards in 3 of those games. Like, he's been really good, Damian Harris. And if he can even get us 1 to 2 targets, that gives us, a little chance for some extra points. I like him. He's one of those low 6K guy, like in tournaments. The other one that I was looking at, and I'll let you kind of talk about your tournament plays, Gutta, is I just would hate to not bring him up, is Josh Jacobs going up against the Giants. Giants are pretty bad. Jacobs is a guy that no one ever wants to play, but he's catching a lot more passes lately, getting the touchdowns, getting inside the 5 carries. He's great. I'm running him mostly naked. I have a little bit of Tony in my comeback stacks, but more so than not, if I'm running Jacobs, it's a naked Jacobs as a one-off. If I'm stacking Raiders, it's the Raiders passing game with Tony as the comeback. But I've got a lot of Jacobs, particularly on FanDuel, where the receiving doesn't matter as much. But I do have him a little bit on DraftKings because he's priced significantly lower than that Zeke range, and I think he's a guy we have to consider for tournaments this week. Gutta, I'm gonna unleash you for tournament talk.
Yeah, and Harris and Jacobs, that those are like where the contrarian is. Everybody's looking for the high price running backs and then value receivers, and when you can identify what the chalkier builds will be or what's going to be more popular, you can then look at it and say, all right, well, let's just flip it. Instead of high price running backs, you go more that mid range, because there's really no low price guys that I'm comfortable with. And then from there, you're looking at more of the high priced receivers, and then you mix it around a little bit. You look at the tight ends, what's there, what's going to be a little bit different, from your build standpoints. And and then also too, with guys like Harris and Jacobs, it's a little bit tougher with the Patriots defense because they are the highest price this week. But those types of guys correlate so strongly with their defense. If they are having good games or strong games, and how they're used in their offenses, it's likely because their defense is playing very well. And if it is playing very well, especially in the matchups that they are, well, the Patriots are going against Sam Darnold, who they've absolutely owned the past couple of years. And Belichick knows that. That the Patriots are coming out for blood. They're starting to turn it on. Mac Jones is finding his groove. The Patriots defense is just going to be ready to go. And, again, against the guy that they've just beaten mercilessly the past couple of years, the Patriots defense has as much upside, I think, as any other player on this slate, let alone defense. I really think there's a real strong ceiling for the Patriots defense. And the flip side with Josh Jacobs, you're looking at the same thing. Raiders defense is a very strong pass rush. The Giants O-line has been an abomination, continuously throughout the year. And while Daniel Jones has shown some improvements, he still has the propensity for turnovers. And again, if Jacobs is seeing a high workload and is getting a touchdown or two and really putting the work in, it's likely because it's a close game. It's likely not a high-scoring game. It's probably a close game where the Raiders are leading and really kind of having an advantage there. And in that standpoint, again, the Raiders' defense is going to work very, very well. So I do think if you're using guys like Harris or Jacobs with what their roles are and everything, you'd be very, very wise to use them in conjunction with their defenses, just because, again, the way that they are used in their offenses, it just makes a ton of sense having those defenses there, and they're in good spots where they can put up points, and they're going to be, in those ranges where they'll be a little overlooked. Like everybody's likely flocking to the Dolphins defense, which I don't know why, but they're likely flocking to the Dolphins defense, and that's that same price range where the Raiders are. So you can even get defenses that are a bit underowned there. That if the running back idea is right, well, you got a high likelihood that the defense is going to be right as well.
One of the things that I brought up in chat yesterday with you mentioned defenses, was the possibility of running a New Orleans defense stacked with Deontay Harris. Mm-hmm. Harris has been getting more targets recently, and he is their primary punt returner and kick returner. So if he runs a kickback, he gets the points for that kick return, plus the Saints defense gets the points for that kick return. So it's a way to stack and to double up on your points without being too crazy, because it's not like you're going to take just any old kick returner. But Harris has 7 and 8 targets in 2 of the last 3 games he played. The offense really likes to use him as sort of a gadget guy, and he's more of an underneath guy than Marquez Callaway, which I think will help a lot with Simeon playing quarterback.
Yeah,
so.
And also too, don't forget that Washington game where he scored that big touchdown early on. He did get hurt in that game. So that could be one of those things that he could have had 5 to 6 targets in that game as well. And he's looked at, maybe he is 45 or 4,600 and looked at in a different light. Harris has kind of been the de facto number one that the passing offense has done much. So it's not, you brought it up, and, my response first was, personally, and this is, my fault, I didn't even realize you got credit for the kick return touchdowns. I thought that was strictly a showdown thing. Again, not that you really target that in these slates, but in this scenario, it makes sense. And it can be viable. I mean, it's something like when it comes to the punt receivers, I prefer to target games where there might be more volume or more potential upside. So that's why I hadn't really considered Harris in pools or anything this week. But listen, if you use the Harris Saints stack on 1 or 2 of your lineups, like if you say, all right, my 3 highest stack convictions are the Bills, the Chargers, and the Minnesota-Baltimore game. It's hard to only use Harris and the Saints once and if that goes off, to really nail everything else in just one particular lineup. So if you say, all right, these are my 3 highest conviction stacks, let's make 3 more lineups with this Harris Saints thing in there, and maybe that hits, and then one of the convictions pays off. Yes, now you're looking pretty live there.
And the way that I look at this too is, like, I was just kind of building with it because I haven't pulled one of these stacks yet, but the way that I'm kind of looking at it is Buffalo, right? I don't love the run back at all on Jacksonville. Like, I guess I would use Dan Arnold if I had to run back, but I think Buffalo, you can run skinny, like you just run the 2 of them with no run back. And if you do that, that's where you can pull a Harris Saints. Now, we don't love spending up on defense up at $3,700, but Harris is so inexpensive, it kind of lowers that effective cost of the, it's like having a $2,600 defense with a $5,000 receiver. Like, it makes some sense to do that. And then you could pull whatever else you wanted to here. You pull an Albert O at $2,600, and then that kind of can work into your favor. You can get a Josh Jacobs kind of a guy in there. And then you just find another running back flex, either a mini stack or just a couple of more one-offs, and you make it work in that respect. And I think that's a way where you can use the Deontay Harris Saints stack without it being too prohibitive with the rest of your lineup. You find the teams that you want to run without a run back, like maybe you don't love running back Denver. You only want to run back Denver from Dallas with Albert. Oh, well, again, Deontay Harris can work in that spot. Maybe you don't want to run back. I was going to say like Arizona, but if Murray's not playing, you're not doing that. But, a quarterback like Philly, let's say you want to do Philly, but you didn't want to run back, or you want to do Chargers without a Philly run back. That's another great spot to do that there. I think that makes some sense as well. So just something to think about as just a little different thing that we can do here. If we return to kitchen, feel pretty good about yourself.
And I think that's one thing that we really that we've seen a lot this year, is that the run backs haven't been necessary for success. I mean, it's just not there. There hasn't been, the games where you're seeing both teams score a lot, they've been kind of funky in a way. Like, when you had that Cleveland Chargers, 45-42, game. Yes, if you stacked the Chargers side, you probably had a great day. There was nobody on Cleveland that really went off. Like Chubb had a big game, but you weren't really stacking the Chargers with Chubb.
I think Hunt worked well in that stack, but it wasn't a ton of it wasn't like an obvious like receiver who had
it was just
8 catches, 200 yards, and 3 touchdowns. You know what I mean? Like
it was just spread out amongst different players in Cleveland, kind of like it always is.
I think there are stacks, like particularly today, where the run back makes a lot of sense. I think with the Minnesota-Baltimore game, it's enough of a condensed target pool that you should be able to run back those stacks. I would say the same thing, weirdly, with Houston-Miami, especially because there's 3 guys on Miami that you can use, right? It's Waddle, it's Gesicki, it's Gaskin. I know you don't love Gaskin this week, but I think tournament-wise, he makes some sense. And then, for Houston, it's Brandon Cooks, and that's it. So you've got such a condensed pool of players that if you think game goes off, I do think the run back makes sense there. And I think those are the 2 games in particular where you kind of have a run back. And I do think if you're going to run Aaron Jones, you should probably run it back with one of the Kansas City receivers. But other than that, like there's no game where I think you have to have the run back this week, because I just think there's a lot of one-sided type big games. And not to say that like Cleveland, Cincinnati, right, couldn't shoot out, but just what you were saying perfectly, like where's the run back going to be from Cincy? Is it going to be Nick Chubb? And if it's Nick Chubb, what story are you telling about that game? Is it Cleveland gets up, pounds the ball, and then Burrow has to go crazy? Because if Burrow goes up, then Chubb's useless in that game. So maybe it's Jarvis Landry, but like I could see you running Cincinnati without a run back for sure in that game.
Yeah. And I mean, with some teams too, like, you're bringing up Cincy, it's sometimes a little hard because there is so many facets of their offense. They've got Chase, Higgins, and Boyd. There are weeks where, yes, 2 of the receivers go off, but it's like, well, what if this week it's Higgins and Boyd and it's not Chase? Sometimes it's tough there without like that strong conviction. Oh, these guys have such smash spots and the other team is going to be scoring that. Let's do it. Because, since he can also run the ball, they've got, decent there with their O-line improved. It's you gotta be a little calculated.
I think Uzama could come in and snipe some touchdowns, especially against Cleveland, who's not great against tight ends.
Yeah,
like there's a lot on Cincy that could ruin a really good Burrow day.
Yeah, it definitely does. And so I'm just looking to see if there's any other inactive.
Oh no, that's okay. Matt's saying Jacoby Brissett stack for all the money. Listen, man, I love that Miami Houston game, and I've got some exposure that I have to go back and figure out. Am I just going to put Brissett in there and call it a day, or am I going to just pull off that completely and pick a different game? I don't know yet. That's one of the reasons it's one of the reasons we changed the time for the end of the show to 12, so we had time to fix our lineup as well and help you guys in Slack. So that's
I was excited about that Houston Miami game from like an ugly standpoint. Like as I wrote, that's one thing that I've been looking more for. It's that it's that competitive high variance game with 2 mediocre or bad teams where if they scored 55 points or if they score 17 points, you're not going to be surprised either way. And especially the last couple of weeks, it's been tougher because there's been good offenses in scenarios where they were double-digit favorites, and that becomes very, very hard to use a lot of them, because if they get up 21 points and one of the touchdowns was the running back, then your stacks are going to struggle because the opposing offense is probably not doing much.
You can tell that Matt's a big Brady fan right here with this "Let's go." That's such a Brady homer thing. Who are your favorite stacks this week? Like I read the article, which I love, and I guess I have some ideas, but just who else? Where are you going this week? Like I know where I like this week, but where are you going?
So right now, my heaviest is Minnesota and Baltimore. Lamar Jackson's going to be the highest owned quarterback this week, so that always. Sometimes that can worry me when it's the most popular.
But can't you just run the Minnesota side, and can't you just run Cousins instead and give you the same stack and lower the ownership that way?
I've done that too. But also it's interesting because you look at how highly owned Lamar is going to be, but the other pieces in the game are not. Like if we bring let's see where we're updated at. So if we look at. So, for instance, on the quarterback side, Cousins is bringing absolutely no ownership, which is why I like him, and I've got a couple stacks with him as well. But Lamar is going to be the highest quarterback. Well, Hollywood is up there in ownership, as he rightly should be. But Justin Jefferson, Rashad Bateman, and Adam Thielen are bringing in all less than 5%. So any stack, any which way with the combination, immediately brings down your ownership with Lamar. And then also too, yes, it's not bad that you use chalky guys because it depends on what your entire lineup looks like. So yes, if you have the highest owned quarterback, but you game stacked it where you have Hollywood and Jefferson and or Thielen, and now your other areas you're using a low owned Damian Harris, and maybe you're using, you're punting with McCole Hardman to eat a little chalk with Zeke, or you're paying down, you're using maybe Darrell Williams or Devontae Booker to get CeeDee Lamb in there as a one-off instead, to get leverage on the Zeke chalk. If you're doing things like that, it doesn't matter if you have the highest owned quarterback, because if you nail your other low-owned areas and Lamar goes off, well, you're good.
The constant low roster percentage for the Minnesota receivers blows my freaking mind every single week. Like, I don't understand why people aren't stacking the Minnesota passing game every single week. It makes no sense. They won't go off every week, but it makes no sense. What are your thoughts on the Chargers? Where's the roster percentage looking for the Chargers this week? Last I saw, Herbert was in like the 5 to 10% range. Where's receivers at? What's the way to, how are you going to play this too? Because I've been using Eckler Williams, and I think we can do that if Williams and Herbert are a little low rostered, and we just eat that chalk on Eckler.
So I mean, Herbert is probably going to come in under 5% again. As I had wrote, this looks like he's being counted out because he had 2 straight weeks going against defenses that he's just not good against. Belichick kind of owned him last year in that matchup. And then I forget who they played 2 weeks ago that he struggled against, but just the defensive schemes were just not favorable for him. And then this should be a bit more favorable. And again, Herbert's the type of guy now that his upside is as good really as anybody else. And, when he goes overlooked, it's an area you can potentially take advantage of. So we know, Herbert's going to be, pretty low owned. Hurts is going to be pretty low owned too. I actually don't have any Hurts this week. I'm kind of off there just because I don't know. I'm just getting a bad feeling about him right now. And where things look to be heading. Obviously, Austin Eckler, probably the number 1 running back this week as far as ownership. And then the receivers, Keenan Allen's come down a little bit. He's probably going to be somewhere between 12 to 15%. Mike Williams is getting no ownership at all. He's going overlooked given the Allen ownership. So that's a phenomenal pivot, which we've seen what his upside is this year. And on the Philly side, interesting enough, Devontae Smith's coming in around 10%. My guess there is because the Chargers are down like 2 or 3. I know one guy is a game-time decision, but they're down the top 2 corners and potentially the third.
Yeah.
So there's a way, there's definitely a way there for Philly, but we haven't seen anything from their receivers. Like, what are you going to do? Maybe
I'm not running it back on Philly. Maybe Goddard. I think Philly I think Philly gets blown out in this game. I don't see that. I think Chargers destroy him.
Goddard would be the only one that I would say you can put in as the quote unquote bring back, because even there, like tight ends, unless it's a guy like Travis Kelce, they're usually not your traditional bring back, because your tight end, especially at their prices, Goddard can go 4x and Philly can put up 10 points.
Yeah,
you can have like the tight ends aren't always correlated to a big offensive game with their team. And what I'm looking at with the Chargers and what I'm playing it, it's basically one of 3 ways. You're either doing, Herbert with the skinny stack using either Williams or Allen. You're doubling up with both receivers with Herbert, or you go the Rams approach, which I've used lately and has a lot of credence here as well. You use Herbert, Eckler, and one of the receivers, and you hope that all of the touchdowns flow through that receiver and Eckler, and obviously Herbert will be as well.
That's the way I'm going.
Yeah. And you just try to gobble everything up, and hopefully Eckler gets 4 to 6 catches there also for you.
All right, we'll wrap it up with this. Outside of the Houston-Miami game, which I don't think is going to surprise people as much if it goes off, what is the one stack that's going to surprise people and make them a lot of money this week, and why is it definitely the Raiders passing? You don't have to say the Raiders. I think the Raiders. What is your thought on the one stack that's going to surprise people this week?
So, The one surprise.
It's definitely the Raiders.
So you know what? I'm definitely I'm gonna make like one or two Raider stacks because I do agree there. Carr passes a lot more than people think, and you know, and even on the Giants side, if you're stacking, I mean, the bring back is pretty easy to me. It's Kadarius Toney because the guy's got upside and he's like your typical GPP play. And I think, I mean, it's not a surprise, but based on ownership, it would be a surprise. And I'm going to say it's the Dallas stack because
I do think the ownership on Dallas is going to shock people at how low it is. Other than
and you know, this is where Dallas. So Dallas has an implied team total of 29.75 points.
Yeah,
that's number 2 on this slate, behind only Buffalo. And yes, they're 10-point favorites. They do run it a little bit more than other teams, but this is so similar to a couple of weeks ago when Tampa was the number 1 implied team total and they were like 12-point favorites. I think it was against Miami, and the Tampa stack paid off. Now Tampa's a little different because they have no problem being up 2 or 3 touchdowns and still passing the ball. But this is kind of a similar type thing, you know. Everybody's looking at Zeke. Nobody's looking at the pass offense because Dak was beat up and this and that. But he had a calf strain. He practiced full all week. He doesn't even have an injury designation. I think he could have played last week if it was a playoff game. And they just said, we're in it for the long run. Our division sucks. Just take another week off. Be 100%. Let's not risk it.
And they won, right?
Yeah, they did.
It worked out.
Cooper Rush came in, played well, and they pulled it out. So I mean, you know, I think it's just one of those things. People are overlooking Dak because he's hurt, but he's not really hurt.
If you look here too, if Lamar's the highest owned quarterback, look at the 3 quarterbacks that are directly priced beneath him. All 3 are going to come in lower owned, and all 3 are in great spots to put up.
Yeah, big
fantasy points this week.
And even above also, you know, with Mahomes, you know, Mahomes is priced a little bit higher, but still Mahomes is going to come in lower. And again, I you know, there's that strong narrative there that this is like, you know, Kansas City comes out and it's just like a big FU because
I think that's what happens. Yeah.
They're the national 4:00 game. The other 2 games at 4:00 is basically garbage. Who wants to watch those at that point? So yeah, I think that, you know, you could see Mahomes just drop a ton of points.
And it's you can easily stack Kansas City with both. If you wanted to do Hill and Kelsey, there's enough value on the slate to make that work.
Oh yeah.
All right, Gutta, I've exhausted the levels that I can get through this live stream. We somehow did it. I appreciate the Gutta show today. It was you very helpful as I am struggling to get through my day. I'm going to go crash on the couch. I will be in Slack. You will be in Slack. I'll back in like a half hour. I got to jump in a shower. That helps a lot with this. Folks, don't forget $3.99 so we get you access to all of our content. BanksterDFS.com. We just got the best team in the business. Our NBA guys are doing great. Hockey's on point. The college football team, I mean, Troy and Brandon they're just insanely good. You got Jeff doing his thing with soccer, Tay doing his thing over in MMA, and Christine putting out her content weekly with that. Just everyone else on the team forgetting. And of course, you get so much Gutta. I don't know if you can even stand it. Just constant, lots of Dunkin' Gutta just all over the place. $3.99 a week at BanksterDFS.com. Get you everything. Thank you so much, team. We will catch you next week. Come see us in Slack. Be a part of our community. Good luck this week.